Good morning, everyone. My name's Beth Godt. I'm with Talking Purple, and welcome to our new office. You'll notice that my background has changed, and this is where we'll be doing our show from for the foreseeable future. Today is March 14th, and I have a lot to go over. I've been away for a few weeks just simply because we were moving studios and it was spring break, and we've had a lot going on here at the office. Not least of which was the primaries here in Texas were held. So I do want to kind of talk through that. So I want to start with the Iran situation. And I might have a different opinion than the mainstream media, which probably shouldn't surprise anyone at this point. But I look at this as the end of a 47-year war, not the start of a new war. I think there's a lot of mechanics in this, which is why or the narrative is that it's new. But the Iranians, since the fall of the Shah back when I was in grammar school, I was in the sixth, seventh grade when that happened. And I'm almost 60 now. So it's been a long run, if that puts it in perspective, that I was 10 years, 11 years old when this happened. For those of us that remember, this is what some of my memories were of it, is that we had people fleeing Iran to come to the United States. And I had some kids in my class. His aunt and uncle one of them in particular, his aunt and uncle had to take him in because his family escaped from Iran. And that was the family that he had. And, to this day, I still see him on Facebook, and, it's been interesting. So, because of my involvement in the community here in Texas, Austin has a large population of Iranians that are dissidents that escaped. So I've known quite a few of them. And then even on our most local level, we have a young lady that we've known because she was the assistant to our SD4 person. And I have customers that are Iranian citizens or now living in the United States, are American citizens, but were of Iranian descent that live there and escaped from there. And the stories are all the same. It's interesting to me because, I think the Republicans get a bad rap at times for not wanting to be kind to people or not wanting to help people, or we're mean to people. But then when it's politically expedient, the other side is running people under the bus without understanding it. So when I assess what's going on, I've talked to several people, one of which, she's the young lady. She said her grandparents get out of bed every day waiting to see if Iran was free. It was freed. And my one customer, I had a fantastic discussion with them because they too are Iranian. And the conversation kind of went like this, which is, our people are happy that we have the opportunity to be free now. Our people are happy that they're not living under oppression. Women may get their rights back. And for a group that wants to scream about women's rights, but yet doesn't seem to understand when they're being taken away, I keep hearing this over and over and over again. So then I was watching TV last night, and Megyn Kelly had this guy on, and what I like about Megyn Kelly is she kind of comes up the middle of things. So she challenges me because of how I look at the world. Sometimes she looks at it a little bit different and kind of goes in a different direction than I would go. So I think the people of Iran, at least the people that I know, are happy that they've been liberated to a degree, although the people that are the oppressors continue to keep trying to come back at them and re-up. I think the American interest is very much different than the Israeli interest. And, I had somebody tell me, and I'll never forget this gentleman. And so, I've had thousands and thousands of customers through my day job company. And because of my personality and, they all want to talk to me. So we had this one guy, he got on the phone. Um, he was an older gentleman whose wife had passed away, and he was about to enter the seminary to go on to be a Catholic priest. And he said to me that Benjamin Netanyahu was probably one of the worst people on the planet. Now we're going back to 1999. So we're going back some ways. And I don't know that I want to say Netanyahu's the worst person on the planet, but he seems to have aspirations of being the superpower of the Middle East, if not being a superpower on par with the United States. And I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. And I think Donald Trump, from my standpoint, where I see things, I think he's trying to make the world a safer place. As long as Iran and the mullahs are running Iran, the world is not a safer place. They are extremists, they are fundamentalists, and their worldview is world domination to help please a religious ideology. And I don't think that we've been taught that in school. I mean, I don't even know I was, and I mean, I had a private school education. I went to Catholic school, so I'm not sure. I don't even know that I had that. I kind of got, they have a different idea of religion than we do. I don't know that I got that their world domination. But if I think about it and I kind of start to look back historically, because sometimes the history, the facts of the present and what may happen are buried in the past. So, they've been fighting against the Christians. The Muslims and the Christians have been fighting for as long as the world has gone on, really, since recorded history. We had the Crusades, and if you don't know what the Crusades are, maybe go watch Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, because at least it gives you a little bit of a overview of how the Muslims and how Christians and what the war was, what that was in the medieval times. We have a modern day version of it, and it's a very guerrilla warfare type, situation. The people that are upset with the Israelis saying, well, you're committing genocide against the Palestinians, it's because the terrorists hide in the homes and of hospitals or function out of hospitals. So that makes them targets, thinking they basically use a policy of human shields. Now, is that right or wrong? That's a whole nother segment that we can have a whole different discussion on at some later date, I suppose. But if you're using a hospital as a human shield and your whole apparatus is in the basement, when you hit that, is it genocide or are you trying to cut the head off the snake? So I know we don't like war. I think I have been in an enviable position or in a disenviable position, I suppose, because I grew up during the Cold War. I remember the Vietnam War on my television as a child. There was tanks on the TV every night during dinner. I'm not sure that I knew why that was, but it was a thing. And then we had, so the Vietnam War ended, and we had a Cold War with Russia, so we were always worried about who was going to bomb whom. The Russians are not religious zealots. I mean, so there is that. When you look at Islam and the modern era, women are severely oppressed. Now, whether you want to agree with that or not, I mean, that's your prerogative. But overall, you have to cover your head, you have to cover your face. You can't drive a car, you can't go to school. They remove and mutilate genitals on a regular basis. Women are possessions. So, as much as we want to complain about the founding of this country and understand, hey, has that ball moved forward? Was it, what was the original impetus of it all? I am not the 100% convinced that the country was founded in a wrong way. I think there was two factions of it, and one faction won, and in the Civil War, the other faction fixed it. And then, you had to root that out of society. And I think it was rooted out of society for the most part, at least to my mind. I think my generation was pretty okay with just about anything that went on. And then we've had the 90s and the 2000s, and the pendulum seems to be swinging in the wrong direction. Um, I just, there seems to be a whole lot of misinformation that's being promulgated out there. And when we look at these things and we look at how things are, you know, we've got to look and evaluate things properly. So, one of the things Megan Kelly said yesterday that I thought was a little interesting was the guy that was there with her, he was saying, well, they had 10,000 people out on the streets and they were all celebrating, and the leaders of the Iraqi mullahs were out there celebrating. They aren't hiding from Donald Trump. They're not hiding in bunkers the way Pete Hegseth is saying. And it's so hard to know the truth in this day and age. I really, it's very, very difficult. Now, I always think of my friend Baghdad Bob because I used to get up every day to watch the Baghdad Bob interviews. For those that don't remember, during the Iraq War, the Minister of Information would come on the TV and he would say, we're knocking the Americans back. And there were the Americans walking in the back of the screen behind him. So there's a whole level of propaganda. I don't know how much rhetoric we're seeing is real and how much of it is just that it's rhetoric trying to cause or elicit a response. Now for the nuts and the bolts as to why. I think Donald Trump has been trying to get rid of Iran. Now, I think maybe Israel was a bit of an instigator in it this time around. I don't know if now was the right time to do this, although in the world of 3D chess, to make sure you have control of Venezuela before you do this tells me that there's some forethought, because Venezuela will continue to help with the oil production in this country so it won't get too out of control. Although, gas prices are approaching, well, here in Houston, they're over $3 now. I mean, it's like 303 this morning at the gas station. Every day it seems to go up 10 cents. I was enjoying my lower gas prices because I could drive down to the coast and go fishing every weekend. So I'm going to have to be a little bit more frugal with that part of it. And I'm sure grocery prices will go back up again because, trucking groceries in, that price of diesel has to get baked into the equation. So there's a lot of economic issues that I think we may end up having more than what Trump would want, because Trump has been trying to get us straightened out from the COVID Biden debacle. And now we've got this. I have to listen to the people that live there that say how happy they are that this has happened. They want the crown prince, the son of the Shah of Iran, they want him reinstated because the Shah of Iran did right by his people. And this pack of radicals that took over Iran has been nothing but trouble for all of us since I've been 10, 11 years old. So I think we should have a perspective. I think we should understand what we're looking at. I think we should try to understand this and educate ourselves on really what's going on. So I want to go over a few other little things here. I do think that Israel and the United States have separate goals, because now Israel's now talking about Turkey. Turkey's a NATO country, so I don't know why Israel wants to now talk about Turkey, but I'm not super confident in that. Well, after we go get Iran, we're going to go get Turkey. Unless you're talking about a turkey sandwich down at the deli, I would say probably you shouldn't go after Turkey at this point in your life. And that's why I think that they have some difference of opinion of what's going on. The other thing that I think is The president, I'm going to say this a little differently than Megyn Kelly said it. The president believes in this country. He believes in the military of this country, in the military might of this country. And I think he is the cheerleader in chief on this. And when I think about it, I can see him believing that this was going to be a whole lot simpler than what it was. In June, we knocked the heck out of them. We took out their underground facility, and then here they came back again. And apparently in this discussions, it keeps being said that they said, well, we have enough material to make 10 bombs, so we're not in the mood to negotiate. And I'm sure Israel thinks that they are a target of this, and justifiably and understandably so. I don't see why they wouldn't think that. Because again, if we understand this Muslim Christian war that's going on, and what Muslim Jewish war that's going on, I say Christian, but the Jews are on the Christian side, so we'll just kind of lump them all in for the moment. If we understand that, Israel is really a threat. Iran is backing the terrorist groups that are living among them, that are constantly bombing them over the last 47 years or trying to cause problems over the last 47 years. So this is not a onion. It's a multi-level problem. But I do think that the president has supreme faith in our military. So I think his ability to judge maybe slightly, I don't want to say impaired because I don't mean it that way, but just slightly skewed. That's probably the better word for it. Because at the end of the day, he has the vision that American exceptionalism and American can do, and that our military is supreme. I also wonder how long he's going to let this go on for, that we start having gas prices at home. And, I see something saying April, and then I had a Democrat friend tell me that maybe we're going to end up with boots on the ground. I don't know that I'm in favor of boots on the ground in Iran. On the other side of the coin, when I look at it from a pure military standpoint, which I'm not a military person, and as this comes out of my head, I'm Air Force true and true because my dad was Air Force and executive producer is Air Force, and a lot of my friends are Air Force. So my heart's with the Air Force. It always has been. But can you win a war on just air power? And I think that is a valid question. It's something that we need to talk about and we need to think about. And can it be won without a kinetic factor? So I'm not in the camp that this is all bad, woe is me, why did we go do this? To the extent that Megyn Kelly and her guests were, because they're looking at this as Trump got us in a new war. And I'm looking at it as Trump is ending another Cold War. This is no different than the fall of the Berlin Wall under Reagan. And I say to anybody that's on the socialist side of this, when the wall fell, where did the people go? Did they go to democratic Germany or did they go to socialist Germany? And that should be something, as socialism continues to grow in its footprint, I think the working socialist governments, they're not out there. So therefore, I think most people don't understand them. Because of this, I think we've seen a rise of terrorism at home. We're seeing weird stuff go on. And then we've got Mondami taking up the Muslim side of it in a very heavily Jewish New York. And again, I never did quite understand how the Holocaust happened. But as I'm watching this, I'm kind of seeing the same thing. We're a frog in boiling water because we don't respect and understand the enemy. And we keep trying to frame the people against us and interact with them the same way that we would interact with each other. And that simply doesn't work because there's a fundamental difference in thought process. And because there's a fundamental difference in thought process, you can't reach people using your own thoughts and your own talking points because you're just going to continue to talk past each other. So I encourage all of you that know somebody that is from Iran to talk to them and get a perspective. If you think that, this is a new war and we can't have new wars and, on and on, go talk to some people that escaped the tyranny that's been there for the last 47 years and see what they think. But I'm going to say this is the end of a 47-year war, not the start of a new war for the United States. I don't know that I can say the same for Israel. I may make Ben Shapiro mad saying that because it seems to be some of them are all, if it's against Israel in any way, shape, or form, then you must be wrong and you're not. And I think that's the other thing is to be so in and not to be able to intelligently assess what you're looking at. I mean, I understand that you want to use Mark Levin's the same way. You want to use your platform to push your agenda, and I get that. But I think you have to do that with honesty, and you have to be able to sort out what you think is going on from what is your belief system versus what does the middle of the road tell me. And I mean, when I mean the middle of the road, what I'm saying is that, if I look at this from a historical perspective, if I understand both sides, if I understand how I got here, I guarantee that a lot of you don't even know that the area that's in Palestine belonged to Jordan initially, and that Jordan didn't want these folks either. So, there's a whole set of history that if you don't brush up on and you don't know, then you don't really understand. And I respect the fact that in today's society, it's very difficult to find the time to go get the historical precedents and read books and understand because life's coming at us, like a fire hose. So I do understand that. And I mean, I personally have always loved history. So that's always been a thing for me anyway. So I think we've got a whole bunch of stuff here. And I think everybody that has an opinion really needs to go look. And I challenge the folks on the left to really go look because you undermine the country when you just start talking without having a perspective. And this is not about scoring political points and what's popular and what's not popular, because the next thing you know, you're going to have an international ballistic missile land in the middle of New York, and then you're really going to be pretty unhappy when that happens, aren't you? So I have to say we should get to the real story and not the politicized version of the story, and that we would all be better off if we did that. So we've got these terror attacks kind of going on all over the place too. And little by little, they seem to be propping up. We just had it here in Klein in spring. Like some guy walked in and they're all got the same, thing when they go do this. The defunding of Department of Homeland Security, especially at this time, is doing the country a great disservice, Democrats. And I'm calling you out specifically. And let me explain to you why. The visual impact is the lines at the airport that are 3, 4, and 5 hours long to get through the TSA lines because there's not enough TSA workers. That in itself puts the country at risk. But the Department of Homeland Security has a function. And a lot of our law and order enforcement situations were abdicated and consolidated under that department. And even the DHS secretary under Obama is now coming out and saying that they need to get this open, that this is a very dangerous time and you're really putting American lives at risk doing this. And I think again, it's always about Max Payne and what is the biggest political gain. And we want to win the midterm election so we can have impeachment, 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 impeachment. How about we do what's best for the country? Now, I guess you could argue with me that getting rid of Donald Trump is probably what's best for the country. I don't agree, but I guess we could have that discussion. But you can't have our law enforcement agencies and the way we have structured our safety after letting in 25 million, because you did that on your watch, not on ours. So you let all these people in. They're now causing problems all over the place. And oh, by the way, now we're going to defund the department because we don't like ICE enforcing immigration laws. And I'm going to tell you guys the same thing I keep saying, which is you write laws, write one, fix the problem, and stop trying to have an issue. And I think that's the whole crux of everything around here is everybody wants the issue for the political reason. Nobody wants to actually fix the problem. And I'm going to keep saying it, and you guys can get mad at me or, cheer me on or whatever you want to do about that. But that's what I truly believe. The problem can be fixed in several different ways. And as legislators, you have the ability because you make legislation, you make the law, that law enforcement. So as you're defunding things so the law doesn't get enforced, you should be changing the law, and that way we're all safe. So there's a whole subtext here of what they think is fair and how we think something is and what we think something should be. And, you know, I, I've got some growing concerns on the naturalized citizen side of this, and I'm going to get to that in a minute because I'm trying to keep all the national stuff together. So, you know, I I look at this and I say, fix the law and stop playing Russian roulette with our safety. Because what are you going to do if a suitcase nuke lands in the middle of Washington, D.C.? What are we all going to do? Get out and sing God Bless America holding hands again as if you guys were not part of the problem. And you can be mad at the president. I mean, I'm not saying that you don't, but you have the ability to fix it. I'm sure you can find some soft Republicans that would come on your side of it. John Cornyn would be one. So, there's a lot of that. And in backlash of all of this, and I'm not happy about this because this one affects me personally, this constant attack on naturalized citizens, okay? I was naturalized when I was 7 years old. I have never known another country. I have never known a different system. I love this country. I know its history better than most people my age, and I know it most better than most people that are younger than me. I have been here for 53 years as an American citizen. Okay. I understand that by sending in somebody like an Illa Omar, maybe even a Mandami, that those people they come here and they bring their ways and their morals and their this and their that with them. Look, I grew up in New Jersey. I'm an Italian American. I'm Italian by birth. I'm naturalized, but I grew up on the streets of Wayne. And that's my world experience and my world view. I remember my mother dressing us at the 1976 bicentennial celebration. My sister and I had matching dresses on. I remember going to Little Falls, New Jersey, and sitting out, and they had painted all the fire hydrants as Minutemen. They probably should have left them that way. They didn't, but they should have. There was such a patriotic and patriotism back in those days from everybody. There was not a delineation of what side of the aisle you were on, which is what type of patriotism you had. So to come after naturalized citizens, I think is a really big problem. And it's the Republicans doing that more than the Democrats, to be honest. And the ones that they're after are the Democrats that are bringing socialist views and socialist viewpoints in and trying to convert our society to the society that they left. If your society was so good, you might want to go back to that society. I think my society, I like living in New Jersey when I was a kid. I like good pizza. I know where the best pizza is in pizzerias. I mean, some of them are still there. I liked having my friends that were Italian Americans that bought their customs over and that we would go to our Sunday dinner and we would go to my friend's house and their mother was right from Italy. And we had a whole, we always had cultural based dinners, if you will. We had a good life. We didn't forget what being Italian meant. I haven't forgot what being Italian means today. But I'm American and nobody's going to change that. So some of the things that I'm seeing go by are things that say, well, naturalized American citizens can't be in the Congress. And okay, except that if I pull out Article 1, Section 2 of the Constitution, I just have to be here 7 years and I'm eligible to be in Congress. Now, why I say in some part that this may affect me is because realistically, I want to maybe run for Congress. I haven't ruled that out of my bucket list items. To be honest with you, I haven't ruled it out. Um, but I have to be a citizen for 7 years. I've been here for 53 years. Maybe the right answer is to increase that number. So that number is high enough that you are out of your culture long enough. So let's say you went 25 years, right? Well, I got here when I got here at 18 months. I was a citizen since 1973, I guess, 73, 74, whatever that was. Richard Nixon was still the president. He signed my naturalization letter. Um, so if I add 25 years on to seven, I'm 32 and I'm okay. If I add 25 years on to being, 20 years old, I'm 45. It means I've been here a majority of my life if I pick a number like that. The thing is that these people that are throwing out and throwing around, oh, let's just pass a law that you can't do this. This is a constitutional situation, and you'll have to do it by a constitutional amendment. You can't do it just by saying, I'm going to pass a law, and you look foolish by saying it because it's written in the Constitution. 7 years you have to be a naturalized citizen to be a member of Congress. That's Article 1, Section 2. You also have to be an inhabitant of a state. And while we're changing the law, part of that needs to change and say you should be an inhabitant of the district because you don't know what's going on in the district. So when we had this whole problem in CD2, I had people coming here from all over the state because Crenshaw looked like easy pickings. So we had all these people showing up to run against him. As it turned out, he lost his seat. Not happy about it for Kingwood from a flooding standpoint, but I truly do understand it. But at the end of the day, this needs to stop, in my opinion. My opinion is if you want to do it, then start a constitutional process to do it. Otherwise, stop talking about it because all it does is undermine my citizenship. Some of these people that are talking, they're younger than 53 years old. They don't even know what the heck they're talking about. So I'm really kind of annoyed with the entire situation if I have to be completely honest on that one. Speaking of Congress, um, Crenshaw did lose his bid, and I had been supporting him. And this is going to tie to Montgomery County too. So I live in the north part of Harris County, which Harris County is like Cook County, where Chicago is. We're not as Chicago-esque, but we're on par with that. So I live in the north part of it, and in the north part of it, it is a red. It is predominantly red. It is, is deep red, although it's getting a little less red than it used to be. And it's up against a very red Montgomery County. The problem is, and at least this is how I see it, okay? I want to win elections. I'm trying to make that a career path. I want to get out the vote, and I want to win elections because the way you change things is you win elections. Trump taught the Republicans how to win elections. And Trump learned from Ronald Reagan how to win elections, which means that every Republican needs some manner of center left Democrat to win the election. Because most people will identify as Democrats, even though they're not way over here. They're not for transgenderism. They may have Trump derangement syndrome, but other than that, at least they're somewhat can be moderated. We are fighting the far left by trying to go to the far right and be just as wacky as they are. And we have an interesting situation shaping up here in CD2. And I hope everybody hears me loud and clear and listens to what I'm going to say. I understand that the fundamentalists got hands on this election and that several of the churches up in Montgomery County helped drive that election. And I'm going to try to go to lunch with Mr. Toth and I'll report back on that and how that goes. He seems to be inviting to talk about flood because that's my main issue, which I mean, my issue is not Harvey. My flood issue has to do with builders and Perry Homes. So I have a completely different take on all of this. So I will let everybody know how that goes. And he's our guy now, so everybody needs to kind of get behind him. But 13% of the population, or of the Republican population, actually the population of CD2 came out to vote. And everybody should look at the Democrat numbers because a lot of Democrats came out to vote on the Democrat side. And the guy that's running, his name's Sean Finney, and the guy that's now running against Steve Toth is a moderate. At least he's positioning himself as that. But this is what people need to understand. When you go to Washington, you have to vote with your caucus, or you get nothing. You're ostracized. So if we end up with a Democrat because he's more moderate and appeals to more people, we are going to have a world of trouble because he's going to caucus with the Democrats. He's not going to say, hey, I'm a moderate. Let me go find where I'm going to go sit in the middle. In fact, frankly, the only one that's ever really done that well is Bernie Sanders. So I think we need to moderate. I think we need to come to the middle. I think we need to stop making comments about James Tallarico being the demon. I mean, listen, the guy's a heretic, and I think as time goes on, we'll get to know that. But you need to moderate and come to the center so that the other guy that has moderated and come to the center doesn't get more votes than you because he sounds more normal than you. Because it's really important that this stay in as an R seat. I think that Trump in his vim and vigor to be upset with CD2 miscalculated a little bit because he didn't look at what was running on the other side. The other thing is that standardly, I had somebody say to me that we need 10% of Democrat votes. And I think it really comes down to what's your message. As long as you're a kitchen table and you're talking about what's on the kitchen table, the Democrats have done that. They've stopped talking about chopping off body parts and transgender and boys and girls locker rooms. And they're talking about people can't afford their groceries. How many people relate to that? Now, do I think they're the ones to fix it? No, probably not, because I think they're the ones that broke it. Just like Jimmy Carter told us to wear sweaters when he was the president so that we could like not need as much gas. And, you know, it was okay that we had to have odd even gas license plates. And I remember getting up and go to with my dad on Saturday mornings on whatever week it was that we could go get gasoline for the cars for the week. That's not solutions. Bill Clinton, love him, hate him, poor dog that he is, he understood how to get his message across and do it in a way that was a moderated way and get consensus from both sides of the aisle so that things went forward and things could be modernized and all Americans would benefit. Now, I could still hear Russ Limbaugh in his midnight basketball games, which was a little crazy. But at the end of the day, we can look back and say whether that crime bill was a good thing or a bad thing or what happened. But he was able to build enough consensus to get that. And we don't like building consensus at this point. The left doesn't like building consensus, and the right doesn't like building consensus. So what happens is we have this massive void in the middle of where nobody needs to go, but everybody has to understand that when somebody with a D shows up, that what's going to happen is they're going to caucus with the D, and that's going to put the D's in charge. And we're going to end up with endless impeachments and endless streams of lawlessness because we have proof of that. I've got two more stories I want to talk to you about that. And then we're going to talk about Judge Hidalgo. So we need to learn how to speak to a broad audience and learn how to utilize language to promote conservatism and conservative principles in a manner that's palatable to the most amount of people. And until we can do that, we cannot continue to be fundamentalists on the far right, talk like the far right, and then scratch our heads and wonder because the Democrats are committed to winning elections. We are not committed to winning elections. We are committed to our principles. And I'm not saying that you can't do both, but there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And I hope that we can learn how to do this as a party. Donald Trump gave you the blueprint and talked about kitchen table problems. We should be utilizing that blueprint. And I think we've got the same problem going on with the Harris County chairmanship too, that my friends in Montgomery County have. And I'm going to talk about their issues in just a second. I think, yeah, let's go to Montgomery County next. Okay, so I want to give you all an anecdotal story. Montgomery County, super, super red, really, really, really red place, okay? Like so red, I can't even say. And they have several of the churches up there that seem to be feeding that. And they have a chairman that got reelected. And I've seen comments to the fact of the Republicans have elected snake handlers to run their party. I sort of understand what they're saying. I think you all do. Get the inference. So we have SD4 here in where I live, which is Senate District 4. And it's a very large area that takes in part of Harris County, takes in a large swath of Montgomery County, comes all the way in and goes all the way out to the coast down to where I go fishing down in Crystal Beach. So it's almost 100-mile swing of how big this Senate district is and the people that collectively live in it. Now, Montgomery County has been the purveyor of people that have been in that. But to go all the way out to Beaumont and all the way out to Crystal Beach is kind of like a far run from here, if you will. Montgomery County needs to figure out what it wants to do here and stop being bullies. We experienced that at our state convention, that all the rest of the people together, if we did not have a contingent as big as Montgomery County pushed its agenda through, which kudos to them for bringing enough people. But they do it because they're a church. They say, okay, everybody in the church today, we're going to the state convention. We don't have that level of organization here. A lot of the people where I live are Catholic. I think it's probably the biggest, if not the second biggest group here in the area. Um, we're more economic minded than we are fundamentally religious minded. Um, there's different types of conservatism, I guess. And I like President Trump's brand. That's a big tent, talks about economy, basically is populism. Okay. The Democrats now are doing their own brand of populism, which is why we're going to have a problem in the midterms unless somebody pulls their head out and starts to understand how to run this. Because you can't just walk around thinking, well, I'm just going to win. Because you know what? You're not. You cannot go too far to the right to win a general election. And if you're pushing that narrative, you guys need to wake up because you're going to lose. And then you're going to be like, well, we're going to fight harder. No, the more as you're fighting harder, your rights are going to be eroded more. Come up with different ways of stuffing the ballot box and having the dead vote and all the other things that is done to make sure that there's enough illegals voting. The other thing is, if I had to prove I was a citizen eligible to vote, I have no problem doing that. There's this thing called a passport. And, I don't know why, if everybody's so concerned about it, don't get a passport. I think most of us went and got them anyway because we had to because of the real ID problem. So I'm not buying this. If you get married, we're taking away your right to vote. And if you do this, you can't prove your name and we're taking away your right to vote. I can go to the passport office and get a passport. As long as I can get a passport, there's nothing to say that you can't prove you're a citizen because that's what that passport does is prove you're a citizen of what country you're of. So there's just a lot of things here, but I am not willing to die on a sword on principle. I'm going to win the election and then I'm going to change the narrative. And the sooner the Republicans learn that that's what the Democrats are doing, the better off you're all going to be because you're actually going to be happier with the outcome of the elections because you're going to end up seeing your brand of what this country should look like being pushed forward. Either that or we need to do something different because what we have right now is not working. And I think we're frogs in boiling water at this point. So I think Montgomery County and the lady that runs Montgomery County, she's a big problem. She's really a big problem. And I'll tell you, it's funny. I walked in the office up there not too long ago because I needed to see what and who won, who had declared for judgeships and all up there. And I walked in and her husband said to me, "You're with the Democrat Party. You need to get out of here." And I said, "No, actually, I'm not with the Democrat Party. I came up to help one of my friends ask me to do something for them. And I said, I'm here to do that." I said, "Your wife knows who I am, but you're a Democrat." "No, not a Democrat. I talk like I'm from New Jersey. I might look like I'm a Democrat. I'm not a Democrat. I'm a constitutionalist is what I am." So, but that's what you have. Like you have to do a secret moose handshake, water buffalo handshake to get in the front door of the Republican Party in Montgomery County. I mean, that's ridiculous. Um, and trying to drum out people that are doing good jobs is ridiculous. It's just my opinion. I did have somebody reach out in one of the comments on the scroll and say to me, "Well, if you're for books in the library that are about banning book or about sex with kids," no, I'm actually on the library committee here for my Humble ISD, and I work to help make sure that these books are moderated, that we don't have wrong, unage appropriated books in the wrong places. And we had some. We have some. I do think, and this is where, again, we're stupid. They sent me this book to read, and the book is so horrifically written, it belongs in a bathroom, not in a library. So some parent complained about its content, and then the book banners, you want to ban books, and then the other people, you're burning books, and we have, hello, the book is horrible. It's no educational value because it's so hyperly horribly written It's a comic book. Put it where it belongs on a newsstand somewhere and call it a day. I'm wasting my time and money reading a book that is the dumber than a rocks book, that it didn't even have a good storyline to it. We should be grading books, maybe not so much on content, but on how well they're written. And, there's a lot of adult books that are poorly written that went on to be bestsellers. I get that. I can name a few sitting here. But, guys, it's we should be talking about what is the educational value to our students, and are we dumbing them down? Because if I'm giving you a comic book to read out of a library, I think I'm dumbing you down. My mother would have never given me a comic book and said, here, go learn to read that. I did have comic books, but they were not given to me as the books to learn to read with. So this whole, and here's the thing, we changed the narrative on it. We're calling them graphic novels now. They're comic books, people, comic books. That's what they are. Call them what they are. Stop trying to make them sound more than what they are. So the next thing I want to talk about is, I told you I had a lot. You miss me? Lena Hidalgo. I have a difference of opinion with everybody on this. I love what she's doing. And everybody's like, egads, how could you love what she's doing? To me, it highlights why I don't want a Democrat to be running the Harris County Commissioner's Court. It highlights to me why I need a statesman like somebody like Orlando Sanchez to take that spot rather than Anise Parker, who's got her own set of problems because she's now having to bow to Rodney Ellis to even get the nomination. Otherwise, we're going to end up with Letitia Plummer with her breathe license plate. And, this is going to get to be a nightmare. So we need to this is a great case study. When the wrong person, I'm going to say this, for better or for worse. I think, the first time she won on Beto's coattails because of the straight party ticket voting. So with that said, that's the first part of it. And she's been good to my community, and I will never ever run her down for that because she has gone out of her way to help my group. She worked in a bipartisan manner with the mayor, with our councilman, with everybody involved in the Elm Grove mess, and she helped facilitate that to the point where she was able to get a unanimous vote to buy that piece of property. Now, granted, Sylvester Turner had to do some things too, but it was I will never take that away from her. When it rains and it looks like maybe there's going to be a problem, she checks on my homeowners, make sure we don't need high rescue water vehicles. She's done her job right when it comes to Elm Grove. And I will never say, and this is where I say, be a straight shooter and call balls and strikes as you see them. She helped me. She helped my community. And that's really all I've wanted. But you can't go throw a fit at the Houston Livestock Show and Rodeo because you can't have sit in the dirt for whatever her name was, Megan Maroney or whatever the heck her name was, that she's all upset about. And you can't throw a fit. You should lead by example. You shouldn't throw a fit when law enforcement tries to remove you or take you out. Deal with it after. My understanding is her people were already told she wasn't allowed down there. So why she did that to go do that? It's a textbook case of entitlement. And we shouldn't be doing that. We need to understand the roles and the positions that we have. Our job is not only to represent and to lead, but it's also to set a good example. And you don't set an example of entitlement. And that's what this is. AOC does it. Hidalgo has done it. Mandami is doing it. It's a whole generational circumstance of stuff. Okay? So people have called for her resignation. And I understand why they have. I need her to stay because I need to highlight and continue to highlight through November why Orlando Sanchez needs to win this. Because that guy is the epitome of class. He understands his job. He understands what needs to be done. And he was out volunteering for the rodeo, not demanding tickets for the rodeo. So I have a little bit different of opinion. I know she's got an important role, that she has a set of powers that under emergency situations, we've had emergency situations and she's done just fine. Mayor Whitnemeyer kind of took her by the ear and drug her through it, as did Mayor Turner. So I'm not so worried about those powers and all of that. I want to win in November. Again, I want to win in November, and that should be everybody's goal because that's the only way I'm going to bring about a sensible government. And when my choice doesn't hold up their end, trust me, I will be just as mouthy as I am now. Because, like I said, Trump, I think he's kind of got a little bit of rose-colored glasses on this Iran thing, and I don't think that he's truly identified that him and Israel don't truly have the same goals long term. Okay. So balls and strikes, people, balls and strikes. So the last thing I want to talk about, and this is sad, and this kind of comes down to the county level as well. I think this made national news even possibly. So I went to a meeting a few weeks ago and I was asked to sign a support card for one of these ladies in another chapter that had cancer from our chapter. And her name is Cassie Daniel. She had stage 4 ovarian cancer, and we kind of sent a card and well wishes and, thoughts and prayers, that kind of thing. And that's a good thing. So we did that. And this last week, her friend, Marietta Allison, was shot parking her car in the neck by an 18-year-old, or allegedly shot by an 18-year-old, or the legend 18-year-old allegedly shot her, whatever that looks like. He went before my friend, Dan Simons, and he was denied bond, as he should be, because he has been previously sentenced to 10 years. It was probated to 3 years. He was a minor at the time, but his probationary status did not end until 10/8 of 2027. And why he was on probation was for aggravated robbery and assault with a deadly weapon. So he hasn't changed his pattern, so it would seem, because allegedly he's the one that shot this person. He's saying he's innocent. Okay, I guess we all have the right to do that. I mean, we're all innocent until we're proven guilty, so I don't want to say that. But where is our worrying about public safety and how we handle convicted situations? The left feels, at least this is my opinion, that these people are wronged and they're given sentences disproportionately, and that their job is to help free them all. Except, you all know I have a hang up with Thanksgiving. I have another lady now that's not going to be home for Thanksgiving this year because somebody, a judge in a judicial system, did not carry out the wishes of a jury. They probated something, let somebody back out on the street, and now he's now accused of this. And now he's facing capital murder charges. So he's going to be for the death penalty. So what have we done for this young man by allowing him not to mature under the watchful eye of a penitentiary system? We've now set him up that he possibly, if found guilty, could receive the death penalty. And this is what my problem is our intentions. We have the best of intentions and the worst of executions. No pun intended. We want things, and we want to be fair, and we want to be this and we want to be that, but there's never any acknowledgement for the things that go on past that. There's never, and I'm going to say it's common sense because that's my whole show, making sense common again. Is it common sense to take somebody that is arrested for aggravated robbery and aggravated deadly assault with a weapon and say, you know what, we're just going to put you on probation because you're under the age of 18 and we're just going to like watch you. Obviously, watching didn't do too good because this Marietta Allison is not going home for Thanksgiving. So I want to say we need to pull our heads out of our butt and stop only assessing half the situation. Everything should be if then. If I let this guy out of jail, what is the chances of this happening again? How harsh was the crime? Is he going to commit it again? Now, granted, I'm not Nostradamus and I don't know, but if at a young age you have a blatant disregard for human life that you're okay to commit assault with a deadly weapon, at 15, my biggest thing I did was go behind the Home Depot and smoke a cigarette. And we kind of talk about this too with the kids that their parents at 5 say they want to be the opposite sex of what they were born in. My biggest concern when I was 5 is what did glue smell like? And what did it taste like? And should I put enough glue to glue the leaves on my paper, on my construction paper? And so we're not approaching things logically. I don't think. But in as much as we want to argue unfairness and this is not right and the judicial system is this and look, I readily admit that at times things are I had an incident and I often think about this. Um, I had my staff in my car, which they were all about 18 years old at the time. And we were coming back from lunch. We had wanted to go to Chewy's for lunch and we were on our way back. And I was kind of speeding down the road, but I wasn't excessive. I was maybe going 55 and a 50, which is still against the law. But so cop got off the highway, came, pulled me over, and I was kind of pissed off because I didn't really think I did anything wrong. And I kind of, instead of being yes, sir, no, sir, and being subservient and I was like a little more animated because I really didn't think I had done anything. And he's like, I saw you, I paced you, I this, I that. I said, I don't think it was me. I had my kids in the car. I was going 55. I said, if you want to say I was going 5 miles over, yeah, probably. I said, but I wasn't doing 65 or 70. I said, I was, and which I know some of you that know me and know how heavy of a hood I have would find that hard to believe, but my kids were in the car. And it got very contentious. And as this was when he pulled away, I looked at the kids and I said, if I was anything other than a white suburban woman, I said I probably would have been asked to get out of the car and maybe even arrested. Because I was really kind of I don't want to say I was belligerent, but I was really that kind of aggravated with it all because it was that I kind of saw it as being wrong. And, the guy was trying to intimidate me because I was a woman. I can see, right and wrong in this, but I do know that if I had been a 18-year-old or 22-year-old black guy, I would have been out on the ground and had handcuffs behind my back in 2 seconds flat. So I understand it and I can see it and I understand all sides of it, or at least I think I do. But on the other side, we can't take that and then allow people to go out and get out because we feel bad. And then now this nice lady is not going to be, somebody shot her. Either this guy didn't, somebody else did, but somebody shot this lady because she is definitely dead. So he may say he didn't do it, and maybe there was other people there, and we don't know yet. But at the end of the day, all these people that have been let out on no bonds and your own reconnaissance, and I mean, if you let me out on my own reconnaissance, I'd be on an apology tour. But again, I have a very different worldview and a world experience than other people. So I think, I feel bad, but I feel bad for the family. And I'm very grateful that we had a Republican judge in the form of Dan Simons that fixed this problem. Because I think if it was a Democrat judge, we might have had a different situation other than they changed the law here in Texas, not giving the judges as much discretion as they had in the past. So there is that too. But anyway, I've said a lot today. I've covered a lot today. I think I probably went way the heck over because I haven't been here in a while. I'll try to keep them shorter and come more often now that I'm all moved. Um, but anyway, so this Beth Guide with Talking Purple. Have a good week. And just remember, try to keep sense and make sense common again, because that's really what I think is wrong with the world. We have no common sense and we can't figure out what's right and wrong. So have a good week. Bye.